Hi, I'm Tom Bizio. Welcome to the Daoist Yoga Online Learning program. Daoist Yoga has its origins in antiquity when mountain hermits, later to be called Daoists, retreated to the mountains and the forest to practice self-cultivation methods and longevity methods. Later, over time, these things came to be called Daoyin, and Daoyin encompassed things that we today would call Daoist Yoga, Daoyin today, meaning rubbing meridians and massaging acupuncture points to normalize the qi dynamic, and Daoist meditation. Originally, all three of these traditions were coalesced into one thing. Over time, they became separated into different disciplines, possibly for ease of learning. So following that idea, we have separated them out into Daoyin, Daoist meditation, and Daoist yoga, which this course will cover. Daoist yoga, unlike perhaps the typical stretching or Hindu yogic exercises, although there are many similarities, rather than holding fixed postures or difficult postures for periods of time, the idea is to contract and relax muscles and muscle groups in alternation. And what the Daoist yogis found was that this created great relaxation in the muscular system. And more than that, pulling on the sinews, as they call them, the muscles, tendons, ligaments, the joints, and what we today know as fascial tissue, could actually dispel pathogens through the superficial layers of the body. So Daoyin, guiding and pulling, and Daoist yoga have this deep connection because the yogic techniques actually pull on the pathogens, pull on the meridians, and pull on the sinews to loosen the joints and muscles, make the body supple and flexible, but at the same time to dispel pathogens, to harmonize the qi dynamic through the sinew channels. The muscles and bones and joints have connections to the deepest levels of the body, where the deep meridians run, and to the internal organs themselves. So simple stretches, or pulling techniques as they were called, done correctly, can have profound effects on the body. Part of this involves engaging the mind intention in what you're doing. And so therefore, some of the Daoist meditation techniques are integrated into Daoist yoga because they either augment the effects of the yogic practices or they coalesce and integrate those practices. So at the end of a routine, by meditating, you've integrated all of those different movements into your body and they become lasting. So our program has a series of videos that show you two Daoist yoga routines. One, the seated Daoist yoga, the Daoist hermit seated yoga, where most of the postures are done in a seated position, either on a cushion or a chair or on the floor. And the other, the awakened immortals Daoist yoga, which is approaches Daoist internal alchemical practice, and those techniques are largely done on the floor. I suggest that you begin with the seated yoga practice and move on to the awakened immortals practice. Not because one is more advanced than the other, but the seated yoga practice develops good habits and it's easier to work with the postures correctly and the breathing correctly in the seated position. So to that end, we have two videos that cover the seated yoga practice and one that covers the awakened immortals practice of Daoist yoga. On top of that, we have another video. Obviously, this is one video in your program. We have another video that works with the breathing technique that we use in Daoist yoga, which we call kidney breathing. And it's very important that you're doing that properly before you move on to the yogic practices themselves. Some of you may have done internal martial arts or qigong before, so you're familiar with kidney breathing, in which case, or what some people call dantian breathing, in which case you could go directly on to the yogic practices. And then we have a 114-page booklet which details all the practices with photos and explains a lot of the historical background, how, from a Chinese medicine perspective, these practices harmonize and heal the body, and also from a Western biomedical perspective, how these exercises work to harmonize and heal the body. And I've included some information on modern fascial research into how the fascia works in the body, which is clearly something the ancient Chinese understood, even going back 2 millennia ago and is only now being substantiated by modern animal studies by scientists. One of the things that they've noticed that I think is fascinating is that animals actually don't exercise, which we kind of all knew, but it's become apparent that yet they can, at the same time, although they don't exercise, they can perform great feats of physical prowess. So how do they do this? Whereas human beings think that to maintain our full capabilities we need to exercise regularly. Well, basically it's through daily stretching and this alternating contraction, relaxation of muscles that creates an almost spontaneous movement in the body, and that requires that the mind intention be engaged in the practice. So in the manual, there's some discussion of this thing that we now call pendiculation and how it relates to Daoist yoga. And then finally, because although the meditation practices are covered in the videos and you're led through them in the videos, you may want to do the meditation practices independent of the video and the rest of the yoga practice. So we've included some sound files of the 3 meditations that are part of the Daoist yoga practices taught in this online course. So practice well, practice hard, enjoy the training, and enjoy the course.